Hey guys, welcome back to Main Street Revival Podcast. I'm Britton.
And I'm Haley.
And we are so excited. We are here at our school. We're recording our podcast live here in our auditorium. As you can see, we have our WCA, Wonder Christian Academy sign behind us. And so we're excited to jump into a brand new podcast series, and it's going to be called Our Story. So do you want to tell them a little bit about it?
Sure, yeah. So we have decided that we think it'd be really fun to share with you guys about our journey, how we started as parents with our biological child, and then to share each of our kiddos' unique stories and our lives along the way, and how we became powerful parents, and how we're still becoming powerful parents because it's a learning curve every single day. And so we're going to share that with you guys, and it's going to be super fun. We're excited.
Yeah, we're excited. So it's going to be mainly us telling our story and us sharing our failures and successes, pitfalls and triumphs as we made it, because the best way to learn is to learn from other people's failures.
Absolutely.
And so we were young when we got married, super young.
I was 18.
I was 21,
20, almost 22.
Yeah, I could drink at that point, but
because I wasn't legal.
But anyway, so we kind of navigated that as you're young, and I did not know how to be a husband. I didn't know how to be a lover, a friend, kind of navigating that world, and so that was a really difficult thing to navigate, because we got married quick too, because we dated a year
and a half-ish.
Yeah, a year and a half. And if you listen to the first podcast, I talked about how that
all of our friends giggled at our wedding.
Yeah, because our vows said 2 years and we didn't date.
We didn't quite hit the 2-year
mark. But and so we struggled in our marriage kind of early on. Trying to figure out how to be a husband and a wife, how to be people who were powerful. And inside of that, we were young and didn't know how to build wealth and kind of move out into our own world. And we were chasing the ministry dream. And we did the dirty no-no. And again, it may work for some people, but it's just not the best scenario. We actually moved in, when we got married, moved into a completely refurbished apartment, a basement apartment, and living with family. And they were amazing people, but because of that dynamic, it took us a good 5 years for us to figure out how to really do married
on
life.
Our own.
And so we lived insanely. I'm almost embarrassed to say, lived in that basement apartment for 5 freaking years. And so that was not a good choice. But I mean, I've still learning how to be a man and trying to figure that out, and learning through that. Now I take time to teach young men how to prepare to move out and build wealth and get on their own and stuff. But so we lived there and had our first child after being married a year and a half again.
Ish. Year and a half.
Yeah. So everyone thought we would be pregnant right on the honeymoon, but that didn't happen.
I was determined not to use birth control.
Yeah. And so we didn't have a baby until we didn't have Justice until we were probably.
I was 19 when I had him.
Yeah, and that was a trial in itself, because we still had not figured out how to be husband and wife.
Bringing the new baby in the world.
And we didn't have a lot of money. Had poor mindsets on wealth and how to navigate and steward and stuff. And so that was a.
We just hadn't had time to grow yet, and we hadn't put effort in to grow yet. We were young. And you think you have the world figured out, and you find out very, very quickly that you absolutely do not. And so that's kind of where we found ourselves with the new baby. And
how do you, in what areas do you feel like, because we can talk about both of us, but in what areas do you feel like that me not being mature damaged you as we were? I am an open book. I want her to lay it out.
We share it all.
I want all these guys to learn from my mistakes. Where do you think some of the areas were that early on got married? I mean, we were in love.
Deeply in love.
Yeah. Not just
That's
sexual.
What saved us.
Yeah, not just sexual. We had a deep, affectionate connection. Yeah. And there was plenty of sexual affection there. But I was preaching at that time, and she'd have to bug spray me before
marriage. You're saying
before marriage, not after marriage. But anyway, so what were some areas that early on did I kind of not being mature enough, not doing it on purpose, but just not being mature enough, did I kind of create damage for you?
Yeah. I think because, and I love my in-laws so much, they're so good to me.
Yeah, we live with my parents.
I'm gonna be real. Your parents, yeah. And they've always been good to me and treated me like I'm their daughter, and I've so appreciated being a part of their family. But I just think that that dynamic early on was kind of damaging to me a little bit, just because I don't think I had a lot of room to come into being a wife and homemaking, because we were in their home, and even though it was our own little apartment. Just the lack of independence. I think I didn't have the freedom. I felt like it wasn't anything anyone did to me.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel the complete freedom to make our house my home.
And I didn't know how to stop being. You don't ever stop being your parent's child.
No, yeah.
But I didn't know how to stop being my parent's child and allow it to submit to now being a husband.
Yeah.
And I think I, not on purpose again, but overlooked your drive to create a home.
Right. Which was always very innately in me.
Yeah, because I already had my home.
Right.
Like my home had been created by my parents, and I didn't realize you had left your home. We were supposed to become, and we had become one, but I didn't realize that
I didn't have that.
You had that drive
to
create home. And so I stunted that for a while because we had to have hard conversations.
Yeah, really.
And that was the most important. That was the most important thing for us. Was that we learned to have really hard conversations early on.
Yeah, we did, and I do think that is one of, obviously it's God's grace alone, but part of what He gave us grace for was to be very open and authentic, and we always laid everything out really bare to each other. And so
even if it hurt
deeply. And so I think that was one of the things that really kind of was a catapult for us and a saving grace for us, was that we did that, and we were always able to work through and communicate through those types of things. But I think that's probably one of the things that emotionally I can remember feeling a deficit in, and then it made me continue to feel like a child, which honestly I was we were young.
We were babies,
and so feeling like a child, not having the ability to, we made this huge jump in this step in life, but then I didn't have the freedom to really make a house a home and make our home just even the organizational part of structuring a family.
And I it wasn't like I wouldn't let you decorate. You decorated, you did those things. This is the thing I didn't think about. My mother always cooked me dinner.
Right.
So I just pushed us into that world of mom's cooking dinner. So there's no reason for her to do those things. It's so silly. You can't cook as good as her because you're still learning how. So why would we do that? I'm not going to do that to you. Right. And I hurt you. I remember I did learn though. Yeah. Because early on we started having those conversations, and you made this is a funny story. First time she ever made green beans for me. First time she ever made green beans, and again, whatever, they didn't taste bad.
They weren't your mom's.
But they weren't my mom's. But so she got canned green beans, right?
Probably.
Canned green beans, poured them into the pot. And if y'all do this, good for y'all, but it's not the right way. But poured them in a pot and loaded them up with oil.
I put oil in them, yeah.
Yeah, lots of oil and bacon, of course, and cooked them down. And they ended up tasting fine, but it was just very weird. And I think I had learned enough at that point to not lie, but to celebrate where there was success, and not to push the buttons of the little things, right? But I still did that. I still messed up sometimes.
I'm sorry.
Is your mic messing up? It's okay.
It keeps falling.
Tighten it real tight. And so with it, I learned a little bit.
Yeah.
Of just not to.
I mean, you were gracious, I think.
But I did sometimes. I messed up sometimes.
Yeah, you were rude. You were gracious and rude. You were gracious in the fact that you really believed I could be the wife that you already had your sights set on.
Yes.
But you were still dealing with your own,
perfection. I was a perfectionist because I believed that God required perfection in everything. And if you didn't do it the way that I had thought was correct, I would nitpick you to death.
Yeah.
And then another funny story early on, we may have talked about this before.
Maybe.
When we moved in and we were washing clothes, and I walked in to her washing our clothes, and she had put the clothes in, and then I saw her. Was it shampoo or dish soap?
I don't know, but here's the thing. I was young and problem solving, okay? We didn't have any clothes detergent. I was problem solving, and I problem solved the wrong way.
and before she poured it in,
you're like, what are you doing?
Stop, don't do that. And from that point on, we compromised, and I mean, you wash clothes now, but
I
it's kind of a habit
know
now.
How, but it is your job.
It's a habit now for me to do it, and so that was kind of early on navigating for you, and for me, it stunted me. Mm-hmm. Like for 5 years, I don't really feel like I grew the way I could have or should have as being a husband until we moved out.
Yeah, we went through a prolonged season. I feel like of
learning how to be married.
A painful season because you're just not meant to be living with other people during that season of life.
And if there's seasons, you have hard seasons. There's nothing wrong with that.
But in particularly when you're making that leap into marriage, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be that learning, growing season together, and you're supposed to. It's the beauty of it being just the two of you is that you cling to each other through the hard seasons.
When you're digging for coins in the couch, you're doing it together.
And so I think we almost had a prolonged season of of pain, and because there wasn't the ability for some of that growth.
I mean, because we had hard conversations in those 5 years. Mm-hmm. We dealt with the major problems, but I don't think we ever really fully got over them because we weren't growing in the areas that were affecting our sex life, our emotional connection, because we were we understood, hey, we're struggling here and we're struggling here, but we couldn't really pinpoint the little foxes, like what Song of Solomon talks about. Like, I want to help you get rid of the little foxes that are causing you issues, because that's what's spoiling the vineyard. And I think for us, it took us a while for us to pinpoint, oh wow, me not honoring her in creating a home is causing an emotional and sexual disconnect. Me not being the man of the household and taking us and leading us was causing issues. And so for you, there was a lot of things that we got to discuss and walk through when we were living in those 5 years that if we had those hard conversations and we're living independently as one, I think those hard conversations would have gotten us out of that 5 year slump quicker.
Would have produced more fruit, I think we just kept going around and around because that circumstance was the same. Yeah,
and so for us during that season, I was working at, was it Lowe's?
Yes.
Yeah, I was working at Lowe's nearby. It was near where we were living, and we had been praying just about change. We knew there was transition because we were on staff at a church at that time, doing all sorts of stuff, which was a good for us. I was everything from over the prayer ministry. We were over prayer ministry all the way to cleaning the church, and so that was a really good time for us to kind of grow in that season. And we transitioned from there to help plant we thought we were going to plant our own church.
How nice.
I know. We didn't know what we were doing.
So smart.
God knows.
To do at 21 and
God
22.
is so providential because we said yes to planting our own church and ended up connecting with a pastor and his wife in a city, and ended up helping them launch their church and come on as associate pastors. They were older than us. We got to learn from them. And grow. And we had our first baby during that season. We had Justice, and he had some complications early on. After he was born. Your pregnancy was kind of
normal. I was very sick, but
she's very sick. Oh goodness, y'all! She lost more than you gained.
I did.
And we would go into a restaurant. If someone's food smelled a certain way, she would have to go throw up and then come back and try to eat. It was bad for a while. And so then through that whole situation with him, gave birth to Justice. And this is a funny story. The doctor looked at us and said, I can tell that y'all are going to be having lots of children. And I was like, okay, sure, praise God. I love good prophecy. I'll take it. Lots of kids. And that word, after Justice's birth, really created a lot of struggle for us from that point on. I was very thankful for that word, but then it kind of almost, we transitioned to a really dark season after his birth. And we'll get there. But he was sick. He had seizures early on.
Right.
Stopped breathing.
Colic.
Yeah.
I mean, all the...
We had to stay in the, ICU or whatever, for days. And then he had of all the things, y'all, she about killed herself breastfeeding.
Trying to.
I mean, I'm talking about, she'd get about that much after she'd been breastfeeding every other hour.
Yeah, I was I was hardcore trying for 6 weeks. Not like I tried for a week.
It was horrible. Horrible postpartum depression. Couldn't breastfeed. Was trying to breastfeed, pumping, putting him on. It was not working. And he come down with we thought baby acne, and was horrible. We're talking about he screamed and cried.
2 weeks full of
nonstop, 24/7
water, diarrhea. They thought he had E. coli. Couldn't figure it out.
Finally, the last night, we took him in because he pooped all night long. Yeah. It was all night.
We took him to a new doctor because the other doctor was just he's not getting how serious this is.
And so they tested his stool and found out that he was allergic.
He had a protein allergy.
Yeah, his protein allergy, and her breast milk and every other formula was killing him. And we had to get him on
very special,
already processed formula and stuff. And so, but he's fine. He's great. That's another. Anyways, I got so many stories. I love good stuff. But so after that, did we enter into our miscarriage stage before we moved to Florida?
I had my first miscarriage 6 days into being there.
Yeah. So we moved to Florida on a word from the Lord. We got on staff at a church in Florida, the Summit, and we were there 6 days.
Yeah, literally.
We were there 6 days. We moved our entire... So after living in the basement for 5 years...
We got bold.
All y'all can sit there and think that it was not a big deal, but y'all, we literally moved from a basement.
And I would like to say your whole family
lives on the same street.
Had lived on the same street your
whole
life. My
sister, my brother, everybody. Yes, grandfathers, everybody.
It's a big deal for you.
My grandfather bought tons and tons of land early on and gave it away. And so everybody had built on the same property. Nobody had moved away. And no one thought I was going to be the first one moving away. I'm a mama boy, and so there's no way. And so then we get the word from the Lord to move to Florida. We pack everything up. Quit our jobs.
I mean, within 4 weeks.
Yeah, quit our jobs, our church jobs, our secular jobs, everything, and packed up and moved away, 6 hours away from our families. And when I told my mother...
You thought somebody died?
Yeah, she literally fell over, about dead. She about died.
Your dad too? Your dad was pretty emotional.
They were really emotional because this was a really hard season. My brother had been...
He had been battling cancer. And he was in what we thought was remission.
He battled it for 2 years, went into remission.
Right.
We moved.
Actually, the same day.
Yes. So we moved.
Right.
Haley started spotting.
Yeah.
6 days after we moved. We are in...
We drove home because I didn't even have time to change doctors yet. So we drove back home 6 days into moving there. And
you were getting checked.
I was they had just told us actually you've already passed the baby, and
right when they said it,
and we had a text while I'm still legs spread on a table, and we got a text that your brother had he had relapsed.
Yeah, relapsed, and the cancer had come back, right. And that was a year. So then we entered we lived in Florida for that year while my brother was battling cancer.
And because we had just moved, obviously I had helped unload everything. And I think we just thought maybe I overdid it. And I mean, I felt a lot of guilt because I was slinging boxes and everything else because I was very, I thought I was like 12 weeks pregnant. And I thought in my head, I think we just thought, oh, this is what it has to have been. It was just a fluke.
And you blamed yourself.
Yeah, big time. I felt really guilty, super, super guilty, because I had remembered being in the truck, like moving the bed and being like, oh, this was probably too much. And then I started bleeding like a couple days later. Yeah. So I think we thought this is just a fluke. Like, this is because of what I overdid it. And that was just an immature thing to do. But then we continued to have like infertility issues. Yeah.
And so my brother, after that year, he passed away while we were living in Florida, correct?
I think he battled it more than another year. I think it was a little longer than that. But it was a
while. And he passed away while we were living in Florida, though.
Right. Yeah.
And so that was a really hard time for us because while he's battling cancer, we had how many miscarriages? Was there 3?
We've had 4 altogether, but I think we had 2 or 3 in like the time span there.
So we had 3 down when we were there, and then we moved back, and we had another one when we were in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Living in Birmingham. And that was a very difficult season for us, but through it, the hard times produced a really strong connection and relationship for us. Sure. Mm-hmm. Because we moved to Florida to run a drug. Well, we moved to Florida to help plant another church because that was our deal. We had planted 2 churches before that, helped plant 2 churches before that. So we were going down there because they had just planted a church and it was a mobile church set up there. So we're going to help with that. And so that was great. It was wonderful. And then we transitioned because the person who was over there drug rehab, the churches, had stepped down from that position. And Haley and I had already been, because we love ministering to people that are coming out of that substance abuse lifestyle. So we were already doing, I was teaching them
3 days
a week or more with it. And so it was just naturally supernatural that God kind of moved us into that position. And while we were doing the drug rehab, which was a 24/7 job, you went through 2 more miscarriages.
And I dealt deeply during that time. I was dealing with an autoimmune disorder. I was very sick.
She couldn't keep food in her body for long. She would eat it and it would either come up or come out. It was just constant.
It was a very sad season.
Yeah, it was very, very bad. But during that season, it really was what James talks about, that when you're going through trials and tribulations, count it all joy, because God's producing. And it's not a faith that we're having to we're discovering it.
Right.
But it's a faith that was gifted by God, and he proves it. He proves that the faith that he's deposited is enough, to get us through there and find joy. So it was a really joy-producing season for us. We
didn't live in a place of sadness constantly.
No. I mean, it was difficult.
It was difficult.
And we were sad and broken, and we were empty. That's a good word. We were empty.
Super empty.
God was abundant for us, but we were empty. And she especially was going through a lot of emotional trials through the miscarriages. And then me moving away from all of my comfort, all of my crutches. I would almost label it a nervous breakdown. Wouldn't you?
I would label it.
I had a nervous breakdown. Just honest, I had a nervous breakdown. Yeah. I took a secondary job at Publix while we were going through all of it, and I was having my nervous breakdown, and I didn't understand.
You say it so casually. He was having a nervous breakdown.
I think I finally have recovered from it.
PTSD.
But I had a nervous breakdown, and I was working as a stock boy at Publix.
Just for extra money.
Just extra money. And I was like, all you do at Publix is you walk the aisles, you look at the shelves, and if something is low,
you restock
you go back to the back, you put stuff on a pile, up in a cart, and pull it back and restock it. I didn't understand why
you were struggling.
I was struggling to do that. I would come home, would I not tell you? And I'm like, it's not that difficult. I'm like, you get the product and you put it on the shelf. I was like, but I'm falling apart here. I had no clue what was going on. Like literally,
it was almost too easy because it wasn't enough to take your mind
off of stuff.
Actually, you were walking and quiet, not having to entertain other people. So you had way too much time to think.
It was bad. And this guy looked at me when I said, "Hey, it was bad." I was like, "I don't know if I can do this." I looked at my manager. He was like, "You can't do this?" I was like, "I don't know why I can't do it." I didn't tell him this, but I was sitting. I had no clue because in that world that I had come from, emotional and mental struggle, you just pray through it.
Right.
You just faith it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was losing it. We're talking about while we were living there, 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, I was going insane, picking things up, throwing them, breaking stuff.
Yourself at all.
My mother was great, my father was great, but then also our spiritual mother, Gail Johnson, I would call her.
Yeah.
And she would help big time and pray for us. She took us in. She has a beach. Her family has a beach house. We would go there, and they would treat me and Haley
like just minister to us for days at a time.
It helped big time, navigating it. But it brought us closer through it all, and it forced us to make room for God to touch the emotional, mental places that we thought we could religion out of us, to perform more. I'm not performing enough, and that's where I broke. I
think that was the pinnacle of a lot of what you were dealing with. Is what the church that we were at. We loved them; they were amazing. We love Pastor Chris and Nikki, and we value our relationship with them so much. But it doesn't matter when you're in an environment that you have the potential that you can get up and you can perform or minister or whatever. That's a you thing. I'm not saying that they created that culture. But I'm saying for you, I think you had been in this small world for so long, and now you were in this bigger world, and you had to learn, you felt yourself performing and you hated that.
And I was failing. Previously, I was the get in, get out kind of preacher. I was the evangelist who would go places, blow up, and everyone was like, "Oh, amazing," and then when I would come back home or trying to navigate life, I was failing miserably, and I would pray more, fast more, read the word more, I would do more, and none of it was enough. And when we went there, nothing was enough.
Yeah.
Only God was enough. And that was the story of when we lived in Florida. She already had a backpack with money and was going to leave.
Yeah.
Because I
had a go bag because you were in such a low place that you just weren't yourself, and I couldn't trust you.
No,
and that's where I found myself oh my gosh, I have this baby, and I had Justice, and
we had Gideon.
And then we got Gideon in the process, which we'll share his story later. And I was just I have to keep everyone in a place that's safe and trusting.
And you were broken.
I was so broken. I wasn't I was trying to plan to go, but I had me a little hideaway bag with enough cash to get gas to get to his parents' house, because that was my plan. If I needed to, and our clothes and shoes, because I just couldn't trust that you were going to be stable.
But you dealt with it by closing off.
Which is my go-to.
That's her go-to. She had become very, because we were ministering to guys who were coming off of drugs and alcohol addiction, and they needed us.
Yeah.
They had to have us. There wasn't a day that we could just not be there, because we're talking about these guys were coming out of jail. Drug dealers. There was times they were fixing to beat each other.
Yeah. So that pressure, the pressure of your brother, the pressure of all the losses, and then trying to perform so that we were. Not that they put. Again, I'm not saying they put it there. You and I. It was the season that the Lord used for us.
Yes.
We were trying to perform to be accepted.
Yeah. Well, because none of those people knew us. We moved from our home to Florida. They didn't know us, and we knew who we were, and so we went in without anyone telling us that we had to do this. We went in knowing, because we've been in the church world forever. I had been in there forever, my whole life. was that you have to prove yourself to gain position or to keep position.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. I felt like we had to prove ourselves every day.
Yeah. To be promoted or to whatever, to be in the it crowd. And that's nobody's fault. That was just what I believed and what I did. And you closed off. I hated myself. And if I could have beat myself, I would have. Physically, but it was coming out, my hatred for me and my fear of I was losing control. I was lashing out at everybody. There was guys in the drug rehab that could have done me over easy. And because I was losing it, there were times that I would get in their face, men who could kill me. Not in the anger of the Lord, but sometimes just like
back off.
And with it, I think there was one time. There's a funny story. During that season, we were getting gas at a gas station, and this guy had walked up to me, and I'd watched him get money from multiple people. I was on edge, y'all. Okay, I was on
the edge.
And I watched him get money. He'd come up to me while I'm pumping gas, and I noticed he had an ankle bracelet on, and I could tell he'd experienced some loss. And he asked me for money. He was like, "I don't have any money, y'all." I lost it on him. I told him, "You're a fake and a liar. You need to get your butt out of here." And then after he walked off, all the adrenaline wore off, and I was like, "Oh my God, he could have killed me."
Just unhinged.
And so with it, but we found ourselves in God. I started going through Romans, the book of Romans, every day. Every chapter I was walking through it. And we totally encountered the grace of God during that season of loss, because I stopped depending on myself. And just said, I can't do this anymore.
And I think we come to a point near the end of our Crestview journey where we kind of looked at each other and we were like, what are we doing? Like, this isn't us, and we're not leaning on God, and we found ourselves looking at each other not knowing who we were, and we decided that day that we were just not doing it anymore, and we were going to lean on the Father, and we were going to follow what He told us to do, and
because we were in a kind of situation where our housing had dissolved and had transitioned, and we had moved all of our furniture back to Jasper.
Right.
And because we had rented an apartment, because Justin, who's on our podcast, he was living down there, moved back up. And we said, well, we'll rent this apartment because we need to get our stuff.
He was kind of stuck. He didn't have anywhere to be.
And so we told him, we said, hey, we'll rent this apartment, you move back up, we'll put all our stuff up there like we're storing it.
Right.
Because
we'll split the rent.
And we'll split the rent. And we were going to find somewhere else to live. We almost, in Florida. We almost moved into a
garage.
Garage apartment or a long-term hotel. Like those.
Yeah, we were so desperate to even then, just to stay and we were willing to do that. And
nothing was working out, and we just decided, I had been in prayer, and the Lord was just like, hey, it's time for you to learn how to be a man and make choices. And we decided, I made the choice that we were moving back to Birmingham. And that was really hard decision.
We really valued our leadership.
Relationships with everyone. Had built really deep relationships with a lot of people, because once you move somewhere,
and you're all alone.
You're all alone.
They become
family. You're doing life for those people.
And there was a lot of amazing people there. It was easy to fall in love with them and to accept them into our.
Chris and Nikki had moved to Canada, and I'd have to have a big word for the Lord to move up to Canada because it's too cold for this little Alabama boy. I would have went with y'all. This is too Alabama boy, but I was like, this is paradise living in Florida. I am not going to one end to the other.
That's right.
And so anyway, so that was kind of that season of life. During that time, we really found some areas that we were weak in.
Yeah.
Gave the broken pieces to God, because the Bible tells us that that God is close to the broken and those who are contrite in spirit. Yeah. And I didn't know, I knew how to get that scripture and marry it to my pre-saved existence.
Right.
Like, God will be near to the sinner, to the one who doesn't know God.
Yeah.
But the one who's been saved, I was taught, after you say yes to Jesus, it's time to work it, boy.
Right.
Get it going. And I had never encountered God as Father as a God who wanted to take my hand in my darkest place and say, I love you.
Yeah, we were really broken. We were really broken. When we moved home, we were really broken. And it was funny because the journey started out with us like taking this big leap of life. And then we came home just broken.
And we had so many fantasies. We're going to move to Florida and we're going to end up, I mean, not really, but kind of. You think you're going to end up in Florida and it's going to be, because we were like 30 minutes, 20 minutes from the beach. This is going to be amazing. We're going to be at a church, doing ministry, plus at the beach. This is going to be awesome. And then cancer, miscarriages, financial problems, everything.
All the things, relational.
Was hitting you, and then mental, like, having a nervous breakdown. You thinking you were going to have to leave your marriage. Yeah. All while we're adopting the most amazing little boy. And I sat
God's
there
grace.
and I told Haley, I said, there's no way that we're going to be able to adopt him.
Yeah.
We were fixing to lose our home. We were poor, had no money.
We ate out of a food bank.
Yes, we were eating out of the food bank while we were adopting him. They can't come back and get us, can they?
Nope.
Okay. We were eating out of a food bank while we were adopting him, and if it wasn't for my mom sending us sporadic money, we would have had nothing.
Yeah.
And there was everything possible, internal and external, that was coming against the plan of the Lord for us and for him.
Which we'll share his story on a separate.
And it completely,
it's beautiful.
God changed. God did it.
Yeah.
God did it.
But I just want to say, like, I know we're really harping on, like, how horrible this season was. But it was the crushing of the Lord. He allowed it.
Yeah.
I don't believe he brings bad things on us.
Well, he was right there with us the whole time.
But I was about to say, we would never, ever, ever be where we are had we not experienced that crushing.
No, because I had a, which you didn't. You had struggles growing up. I had not had as many. I had like normal things like parents arguing, my father losing his job and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But never on a...
I grew up with a single mom, so I had a lot of experience.
Yeah. And I didn't...
Those painful kind
and really, I mean, I know we're kind of bouncing around, but even like, I didn't realize I had some mental disorders and stuff, because even right before I met you, I had went through an extended period of depression and had lost like 50 pounds before we met, and I didn't deal with it.
Right.
I thought it was me.
Then you met me and it made you happy. And you forgot about your depression.
I thought it was me and circumstances.
Right.
That was the problem.
You didn't realize you weren't processing life.
There was something broken on the inside. I wasn't giving it to God. And that was for both of us. I mean, you growing up, you
had a lot of anxiety.
You held in so much, and then religion taught you to be afraid that God was going to judge the earth and take all your food away, so we had to get free drug food. But anyways,
that's your tangent.
Yeah, but anyways, and so that's kind of the beginning story of us kind of getting married and walking through those things. And I'm telling you, the 5 years were rough, but it produced a marriage because of the goodness of God that there's nothing now that could come our way
that shakes us,
that would shake us, because the Lord takes us, because we've given ourselves to the Lord to walk through this. Because even recently we had a scare with one of our little girls thinking that she had a major blood disorder.
We had a couple. We had 2 cancer scares with 2 separate kids this year.
Yes, and we were not perfect through it. We had fear, we had anxiety, we had those things that come at us. But it's almost like we could look at each other and say, we've been here before.
Yeah.
And
He takes care of you.
He takes care of us.
Yeah.
We don't know. It may not. I don't know what.
Fun.
Yeah. We looked at it. So we're going to pray. We're going to believe. We don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
But I know that He wins in the end.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Right.
Maybe not in this time that we see it.
Yeah.
But in eternity, there's going to be the fulfillment of His purpose. And so, anyways, my takeaway and giveaway, my free giveaway, is don't hide your brokenness from the Father. He loves it.
Yeah. in extended seasons of pain, they always produce something on the other side.
Yeah.
And I think for us, if we would have known in the beginning of, you say 5 years, it was really 7 counting Crestview. But if we would have known at the beginning of those, 7 years, what the second half was going to look like, because now we're 15 years in, so we're 8 years on the other side of this now. And so, if we would have known, we would have chose to do it because it got us here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And He got us here.
Yes.
And I think that just trusting in the fact that extended seasons of pain always just produce, a happy ending on the other side. And I know that's silly, but I'm just saying, like, it produced such character inside of us that now we can process and walk life out in such a different mindset, in a different way. And it's a tool, and it's a gift in our life that keeps us able to be steady. And I think that that's so important.
Yeah, and it helped me. I think it helped you to realize that no matter what you do, it's not going to produce the fruit. You can, because we were faithful. We were like Sarah and Abraham faithful. Like laughing at the promises sometimes, believing in the promise other times, not believing, trying to make it happen like Abraham sleeping, but God did it.
Yeah.
And that's where my faith is in now, in God, not in me.
Yeah, because anymore. I mean, once we came home and we were so broken, and we really spent 9 months just us, our kids, and the Lord,
recouping, looking at ourselves, saying, "How did we get through it?"
Yeah.
And I can tell you, hey, pray, be in the Word, learn how to pray the Word. Like I can give you tools, but none of it is what actually produced the fruit.
Right.
It was God. It was just God. There's no other. It was the grace of God. There's nothing else that you and I can tell people that.
Well, and it bought us, I guess is the word I'm going to use. It bought us a history with the Lord. Like that. That's
He paid for it. He paid for our history with Him.
And that history is what we refer back to now when troubles and trials come.
Yeah.
And it's our currency that we're able to exchange for words.
I love that. I love that.
And it's been such a gift, and I'm super thankful. I will do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're going to continue on, kind of walking through our story.
That's our story. We're going to share Justice's story a little bit, Gideon's story, all of our kiddos' beautiful stories, and try
to throw in just some encouragement and tools for you to navigate life as we continue to learn and grow together, because we believe that conversations are transformative, and that's
this is probably the saddest portion, y'all, so stick with us.
So stick with us, and we will see you guys again on Main Street Revival Podcast.
Bye.